The first thing I'd like to do is, I guess I should explain why we're here. It's called, luckily, we had access to something called the Pro Grant. And what the Pro Grant does is I'll give you the definition from the internet. Ontario's Pro Grants are designed to support parents in identifying barriers to parent engagement in their own community and to find local solutions, or sometimes New Jersey solutions, to involve more parents in support of student achievement, human rights, equity, and well-being. Now, obviously, we're going to add things like the word pandemic. And so it's all about parents, supporting parents, because this is parent driven. Us on the Parent Council arranged for this, specifically Ms. Liao, I think, was the front runner in getting us access to Dr. Liao. I won't really introduce her because it's my understanding that Ms. Lam is going to do the actual introduction. Is that right, Shuang?
Yeah, it's you.
Maybe I can step in, Paul, if that's okay. And then I can let maybe Shuang introduce Ms. Liao, if that's okay, Dr. Liao.
Yeah, sure.
But I just wanted to say hello to everyone. For those who haven't met me, I'm on paper the vice principal of William Berczy, Alex Pasta. And it's so great to see everyone again and connect with you all. And I know that we've spent some of us many years together at William Berczy, and there I am with my Halloween costume. I think that was my last day in face-to-face. But it's so grateful to represent William Berczy, the administration and the school and staff this evening. And Ms. Lam sends her regrets. She's unable to be here at this time to do the introduction and to welcome everyone. But she's hoping to join shortly into the presentation. And I know that from what she's told me, there was the presentation last week in the Mandarin language. And she described it as incredible and amazing and very well attended as well. And so I'm going to pass it over to Shuang, but I also wanted to thank Dr. Liao for being here this evening, all the way from New Jersey. You've traveled quite a distance, and
Hello.
we're very grateful for you to be with us to share. I can tell you, as I'm in the elementary virtual school now, and I can tell you that student mental health and well-being is at the forefront, and parenting goes a long way in being able to support students. And I come across challenges every day in my role where parents are struggling to support students with their engagement, with their ability to manage stress, their ability to keep up with work, and really just their overall well-being and sense of positive self-esteem. It's a challenge. And as parents, as a parent as well, I found even when I was home with my own kids for a month, that was really challenging to be working and also have the responsibility of having them educated and being there to support their education. So I think this is a great opportunity for you, Dr. Liao, to share with our community some strategies and tips and ways that we as parents can work with our kids in support of their mental health well-being during this pandemic. So I welcome you. And I'll let Shuang, if Shuang, you want to add anything
sure,
to what I've said.
Thank you, Mr. Pasta. Before we get to
You're welcome,
Shuang,
Paul.
just a couple of things I wanted to mention. I understand that not all of the people on this call may come from William Berczy, because I believe we've extended the invite to some other schools. So just a little bit of background. So the William Berczy is a public school. It's been around since 1967. It's in Markham, Kennedy and 16. And I was going to just mention quickly, good on Ms. Lam. It can't be easy to start a job and take over a position pretty squarely in the middle of a pandemic. I remember, because I was on the council last year, I remember getting the call even before school started, and it was June or July. So I know she is very motivated When we told her about this presentation, she was all for it because mental health and well-being is important, and we're really looking forward to what Dr. Liao has to say. Just a couple of things, housekeeping things. If you can, to all the participants in chat, why don't you just mention how many children you have in the public school system and their ages, because we can get that information to her. And if it might help her guide, if she knows, because I'm sure, I wasn't at the Mandarin presentation, and even if I was, I wouldn't have understood anything. But I'm sure that there are some techniques and things that might, if it turns out that most of the people on this call are, grade 6, 7, and 8 children, she might want to gear it one way. And if it's the younger children, another. And if it's a mix of, from grade 1 to grade 8 and so forth, then she'll probably just do a more broad presentation. Now, this is scheduled for her presentation, which I understand is going to be around 2 hours. And then after that, we're going to open it up to Q&A. Thank you, by the way. I see all the ages coming in. If you're going to likely, I'm sure this is going to be a very thorough presentation, and thoughtful and thorough, but it might raise some questions. Put them in chat, and as the moderator, as I see questions, I'm going to be kind of typing them out for myself, and I will, when the time comes, because there might be 3 different questions that are really the same, and I'll probably try and paraphrase them into one for her. And once I'm done this part, I'm going to mute myself. If everyone else isn't muted, I'd ask that you do so, because we're not going to be doing the questions orally until the end, and then I will do it for you. So just put those questions in, as I'm sure you don't have any just yet, because a lot of them are likely going to be answered by her wonderful presentation. But as they come up, put them in, because then I'll keep track of them, because then you might ask a question, and 15 minutes later, she might squarely answer that question just in the natural portion of her presentation, so then I won't bother asking her that question. So I'll put it over to Shuang. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Yeah, Dr. Liao is a founder of schools and the 2 nonprofits. First connect with her was when I was in New Jersey. I was with my daughter just born, and my son is about like 6 years old. It was very difficult time for me. I was alone be there. And I experienced a very, very difficult time for parenting. So that time I was introduced to the PCE club, and I've been introduced the EQ parenting concept. That's actually saved my life almost. And it was holding my hand for those years. I keep learning EQ parenting as a foundation, how I learn other parenting skills. It's really helping me. So I wanted to introduce this chance to, like, since pandemic, we can access everything through online. So I'm so happy we can invite Dr. Liao to come here and give us a talk about her EQ parenting. So her professional expertise is in mental health and behavioral health for the youth and the families. She graduated from the Berczy University in China and got a PhD in physics from the University of Houston, and MBA in finance and managing information system from Rutgers University. In 2019, she became a licensed social worker in clinical psychological counseling. So under all these titles, her experience with kids, her mindset for the education, her passionate with education, it's really, really matters for her to really care kids, caring parents, really want to help the family to go through all the difficult times. Okay, Dr. Liao, that's all yours.
Thank you, Shuang. First of all, I really
stop sharing.
Okay.
Okay.
Am I sharing it? Let me see. Sharing. It's, let me see, it's interesting. Reason I'm hesitating is somehow I couldn't click the button saying slideshow because it's hidden behind this. Oh, okay. I'll try a different way. Okay, here we go. Because last time we didn't have this problem. Okay. Just give me 1 second because I just need to access that button hidden behind it. Okay, slideshow. Okay, here we go. Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. I have to say, when people call me Dr. Liao in this kind of circumstances, I always feel a little bit guilty because from what I've learned recently is, unless my doctor was related to the topic, I shouldn't be called a doctor here. So let's apologize and get that out of the way. I am just a parent who happened to study physics for many, many years. And reason I'm here is not because I'm a doctor of psychology, but rather it's because I'm just probably older than most of the parents. So I know a thing or so. And also, fortunately, I got involved with PCE Club, which Shuang just mentioned. We met there, and actually, because of my experience with PCE, and I chose to start learning to become a psychotherapist. So it's been not a shortcut or straightforward career path, but I'm glad to be here. Reason I mentioned PCE for obvious reasons, because most of the ideas were developed there. And also I wanted to mention United Chinese Americans because a lot of the talks and concerns were also under the United Chinese American UCA's mission, and I'm a proud director there. I just like to mention it because I think some of the audience are from the US. Okay, we are on the second slide. My fat fingers here. Okay, so this is the slides. I have to apologize because the whole presentation has always been in Chinese, and I today did translations, and on this particular ones, please forgive me. I have illustrated the 3 elements of EQ parenting, but you also see some Chinese characters. Okay, so relationship, intrinsic motivation, and accepting imperfections. And let's say these are the 3 elements of EQ parenting. And the reason we're going to focusing on EQ parenting is because I just looked through the ages, the range of the ages. Today, apparently, it covers from 5 years old to 18, 19-year-old. And we have kids, even, the kids in the regular classrooms or kids in special unique learning style classroom. So we have a wide range. And also, I always heard people talking about how about teach us something, what to do during the pandemic, while the kids at home. In my mind, most of the issues that we are going to talk about should be quite general. It's almost like, if I were just to give you a list of things to do, or you give me a list of problems to solve, and that would be like throwing a book of problem sets of physics to you. And if you just finish all those problems, I'm not sure you actually master physics, right? Does that make sense? So I always thought that if you just can solve certain problems, it may or may not enable you to solve other problems, because we got to start with certain kind of framework, right? In physics, we also learn about the Newton's 3 laws, right? And then we started doing some problems in class, which is what I'm going to do today. I'm going to use some examples, and hopefully I'll do an okay job. After leaving the classroom today, you will feel liberated. It feels like physics not so difficult. Oh, I mean, parenting is not too difficult. So when you go home, everyone will be facing a set of different problems, homeworks. So everyone's will be different, but I trust that with all of us, what we learn, and with everyone's intelligence, your own education and everything, after all, people have been educating and raising their children for thousands of years without having to attend my seminar. So I'm sure you'll be able to do a great job. We're just going to focusing on certain things that might have brought us here, because we are actually in a different era from the time we grew up. So there's always that same old generation gap. I mean, this is regardless of culture, right? Every country, every culture, you're going to be talking about generational gap, because especially now in the modern world, the concepts are all different. But another, I would say, for the parents in the audience who are first generation of immigrants who are new to this country, for beautiful Canada, I would say we also, I mean, myself included, we also facing another set of barriers, which is the cultural barrier. So we're talking about these issues because we are facing generational gap and a cultural gap with basically with our children. So we have to start with something. We call it EQ parenting. And there are 3 elements. Again, important things that we need to emphasize 3 times. So it's relationship, intrinsic motivation, and accepting imperfections. So we're going to see what they are and why we have to learn about these. And hopefully learning about them will help us to deal with our own homework at home. So I call this framework, it's liberating. And why I added the adjective Asian families. I had to say because eco-parenting was developed with PCE, which is a parenting group for mostly, I would say, Chinese parents. A lot of the things we read among all those books we found here in the US or in Canada, we found sometimes they could be very confusing. Some of the books will even talk about things that's contradicting to each other. Both were written by doctors. Who do you believe? And the funny thing is, some of the things that works for some of the parents, families, they are not really familiar concept for us who come from a different cultural background. I always use the example, there was some books talking about if you lost touch with your teenagers, Dad, take your son to the wilderness, 40 days, don't bring anything and try to come out alive, see what kind of relationship you'll have with your son, And our Chinese parents will say, oh my gosh, if my husband go into the wilderness, I'm not even sure if he could survive, right? Because we didn't grow up with Boy Scouts, these things. So my point is, some of the things we wanted to pick and choose, those are, we think are either missing or actually make it more important for our Asian families to be aware of. But at the same time, for those of you in the audience who are not Asian families, it doesn't mean it's not important for you. It just means that some of these things, as I'm going on, you might think some of these might have been more natural for you. And you will probably use this opportunity to also learn about what's going on inside those Asian families. Because we had to admit, especially we're talking about the first generation families, we do have slightly different cultural backgrounds. But let's see. I had some of these just for the people in the audience if they want to learn a little bit more about the PCE club. But basically, it just says the concept were developed in the PCE club since 2014. And I have been giving talks like in Canada, US, and China. And the last line, I think some of you might be interested on YouTube. You can search Liao EQ and you will be able to find some of the other videos. I promise this is only slides and most of them in Chinese, okay? Okay, we're going to jump into element 1. Do you still remember what was the element 1? The first element was relationship. So good parent-child relationship. And I already know some of you might think, but isn't that a given? Of course, the relationship between you and your child is the most important thing. However, for those of you growing up maybe in the Asian, or I know when I was growing up, it was not necessarily so. It was not natural. You know, sometimes you often heard parents were really telling their children, or even grown-up children, to say, you have to do this, so and so, so and so, even if you hate me, or if you don't do it, I will announce you will no longer be my daughter, or I will denounce you, renounce you. All those things happen all the time because in our culture, for many, many reasons, sometimes the relationship with your child has to be put in a lower priority. So what we are emphasizing here is relationship should be placed on the number 1 position. It is the foundation for communications. So always stand in the same trench with your child. I know some of you in the audience, maybe the school administrators, you say, I sometimes see parents always overprotecting their child. Are you telling me you're preaching that? Well, in the reality is the parents are the only safe harbor for their mental, emotional health for their child. And let's see how being a good parent could be always standing in the same trench with our child without losing principles. Okay, so what we're talking about is really empathy. Empathy meaning you're not, sometimes I hear parents say, oh, you mean when my child behaved well? Of course, we're the best buddies, but when he's misbehaving, I'm just going to be so all over him or her, I'm no more her like a buddies, I'm not in the same trench with you, But all the parents, especially those in the audience having children who are in the teenager years, and if you are on the opposite side of your child, whatever you say, do you think the child will be willing to listen, or will be more considerate of your feelings, right? So all we are talking about is, regardless, your child is your child. He or she always needs you to be able to look at the problem from her or his perspective. Or we can say it this way: it's probably enough to have the principals and the teachers sometimes on the right side, because they always have so many kids to take care of, and sometimes it's very challenging for them to attend to every individual child's needs. So it is the parents that really need to be in the same trench and be able to say things or keep your mouth shut, depending on the situation, so don't make things worse by annoying them. Okay, so how to actually do it? I highly recommend the book written by Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, Nonviolent Communication. It also works when you are in the workplace. There were 4 elements he's talking about. Always use your observations, talking about your observations during communications, not judgment, and always talking about feelings. Feelings be your child's feelings, your own feelings, and whenever we experience anger, learn to recognize the primary emotions behind it. Okay, I'm going to fly through some of these. The idea is to introduce some of the concepts for the rest of the presentation. Okay. And always talking about needs. And needs, sometimes we overlooked, we sometimes talking to our children about what's right and what's wrong, what you should do, what you should not do. But we forgot this concept about needs. Have we ever thought about what are my child's needs? Why will he do it? And what are my needs? Why am I so anxious? So the 4th element in MVC is making a request. Okay. At the end of the conversation, when we talk about the feelings, talk about needs, and we talk about making request, the difference between request versus demand. Okay. Because when you make a demand, you must do such and such. You are using power and authority. Okay, and when we talk about children's rebellions, they are mostly against your power and authority. And a lot of times the children, they have their own ideas. They want to try different things. You know what? It's all the school's fault, right? Our wonderful school has been teaching them critical thinking. I'm just being, just kidding, actually, right? Critical thinking is wonderful things. So a lot of parents, especially first-generation immigrants, we may not realize what our children learn in school. So sometimes the children feels, how could I explain it to you? You just don't understand. You can't be talking to me like that. I try to do this. I just wanted to see if you were wrong, But talking to a first-generation parent, trying to prove the parents is wrong, that's a no-no. You obey, you listen. I know more than you do. right? So critical thinking teaches our kids the real survivals in the real world, but the right way to do critical thinking actually is based on your knowledge and your true experience. But our children, they're still learning it. So they are flexing their muscles, So they look around, they think, They look at your parents, let me try with you, right? So you see sometimes kids still wearing shorts when the weather is very cold. And parents say, come back, otherwise you'll catch cold. And the boy would say, I just wanted to see if I wear shorts in the cold weather, whether I will really catch cold or not. Maybe I'm eating better than when you were growing up. I would not catch cold. Who knows, So he's not really rebellious against you. He's actually trying to find his independence, trying to see, maybe I'm different from you. Maybe whatever you say, it's true, but that was in China, now here, right? Or so a lot of things, it's because our children is no longer the babies. When they were babies, you would say they are probably like in the circus, the little doggies or little monkeys, they know if they don't listen to you, you will not. They wanted to listen to you so that you give them food, they give them shelter. So they listen to you. But our children, when they were young, they were sort of like that, so they listen. So a lot of parents say, oh, my babies were angels, until they were like 11. Okay. Or some say, oh, 11, mine is 9, That's when, fortunately or unfortunately, they discover, oh, giving me food and giving me shelters are required by law. You cannot put me out in the street. You cannot just starve me. So that's when they realize, also they learn to flex their muscles. So they realize they're not afraid of being penalized by you if they stop listening to you. So if you have a culture at home, learning during the communication, you are making requests, not demand. This will help along the way that you will see adolescents, they do not have to rebel. There is another wonderful book. I hope you'll take a note. It's called Parent Effectiveness Training. It also followed a very similar idea here, talking about children, the parents following the PET approach. Actually, they report the adolescents has very little rebellions. In Chinese, sometimes we say 无微不至. Okay, so I would say a lot of time, our children nowadays grown up in a kind like partially suffocated by our love in every possible way. Okay, and in Chinese, especially, sometimes we often say, 都是为了你好. Okay, so also I'm sure this is across all culture, like parents wanted to do everything for their children, and sometimes unwillingly our children were hurt by that. So the democratic way, we always talk about feelings first and then reason. And that's very easy said than done, because I even observe my own reaction whenever I talk either to parents, other parents, or my own children. Very natural reaction is you started to address the issue, okay? No, you cannot do it. As opposed to say, oh, I can see why you do it, but no, you cannot do it. But even that is difficult to start with, even addressing. You understand why, how they feel about their action. And then dealing with the reasons, but how to deal with it. We're talking about the democratic ways, defining the problems, who owns the problems, setting the boundaries, a lot of issues we're going to talk about is regarding crossing the boundaries, parents overtaking a lot of things, and the democratic way, after everybody recognizing who owns the problem, and there could be a brainstorming sessions. Through brainstorming, you find the solutions. Who owns the problem? Who got to pick what the solution should be? And if both of you own the problems, then you should have a mutually acceptable solution. So, and whoever picked the solution need to bear the consequences. So this is what nonviolent communication is all about. And just wanted to lay it out there. I know it's a little bit boring, dry, but just like we're going to come back to this. So relationship is important, but I also know from all of the pre-seminar questions that a lot of parents wanted to know, just tell me how I can motivate my child, especially during this pandemic. My children are losing their drive, so we're going to jump to the element 2. The second element, it's called the intrinsic motivation. So how to awaken the child's drive. So let's look at what does it mean when we talk about the internal drive or the self-driven child's motivation. Okay. On our previous introduction, actually, I should say our PCE club, every year we have an annual conference, and every year we like to invite speakers, providing sometimes some thought-provoking ideas. And one year we invited a speaker called Alfie Cons. He wrote the book Unconditional Parenting. And one thing stayed with me. He emphasized the differences between intrinsic motivation versus inner motivation. Here's what intrinsic motivation is about. It's from your passion. It's from the heart. And if you see a child just like immerse himself in this thick physics book, like 2 days before a general SAT test, couldn't care less about what SAT is, but he's very, very into this physics book. You know that's intrinsic motivation. I happen to know one child like that, and parents was so upset, so crazy. Say, Dr. Liao, help me. My child was really wanted to study physics 2 days before SAT. He's not even going to be tested in physics. So, but that is, let me see. So don't care what other people would say. Like my daughter, after graduate from architecture school with outstanding honors and all these potentials, chose to become a baker. That's intrinsic motivation. So don't care about what others will say. And a lot of parents will say, but my child's already 16 years old. When will he find his intrinsic motivation? Well, there's no timetable about this. Every child is different. So a lot of time our parents will say, but then how can I motivate my child? And there's a wonderful article written by a professor in Stanford University, actually pointed out, literally you cannot actually motivate another person. Motivation by definition is from your heart, from your own heart. So as a parent, you could only use your actions, your behaviors, your image to inspire and to influence. So again, I'm borrowing this line. Some of you in the audience may be Chinese, you'll recognize it. Okay, just like the rain, when it rains, okay, it's moisturizing everything silently. Well, unless it's a thunderstorm, of course. But that kind of soft rain, let's do it that way. So it's not by pounding the idea into a child's head, not by preaching or lecturing. I mean, excuse me for that typo. Not by preaching or lecturing. So inner motivation, on the other hand, is based on what others think of herself or yourself. Although sometimes I hear parents a little bit kind of proud, but don't want to really brag, because she will be hated by everyone, of course, because, oh, I have a child who's really self-driven. I don't really know what you're talking about. You mean your child played computer games all night long and not studying? My child is kind of self-driven. Yeah. So when you talk about that, I wanted to make sure, if one thing you learn from today, I wanted to be able to be sensitive about this motivation is intrinsic or inner. Because inner motivation, it could be a double-edged sword. It could be coming from the guilt that lots of our parents are so good at putting our children feel. Oh, you what? You did what? I sacrificed everything in China. I came here for you, and you didn't even appreciate the opportunity. You study hard or else. So that kind of preaching or upbringing, sometimes, I'm just using that as an example. I mean, there could be lots of other examples. I wasn't born in this country or in the US, so I don't know what your normal ways of trying to put your kids feel like, oh, okay, I give up, I'm so guilty, So, but basically it is from your inside, but is not necessarily out of your passion. Okay, so it could be because you want to look good in front of other people, or you just wanted your parents to feel proud of you. I mean, it's not a bad thing wanting other people to be proud of you. I say it's a double-edged sword, and we will find out, okay? And sometimes people say, yes, this kind of inner motivation could lead to intrinsic motivation, yes. So all I'm saying is just be careful, be mindful. So when I was interning in Princeton University on my second year of my social work study, I got my master in social work from Rutgers. So my second year internship was at the Counseling and Psychological Services in Princeton University. And I would say we had a lot of cases of anxiety and depression. During that 9 months, most of my job as a intern, I was seeing 200 students for inertial counseling. Basically, my job was just in 20, 30 minutes time, quickly decide whether the child has safety concerns, and then trying to find out what type of follow-up will be most appropriate. And sometimes we have to, sometimes we need to refer students to outside counselors. Sometimes I connect them with internal therapists. So from my experience was that there is a wide range of mental and psychological conditions and concerns, and majority of them were anxieties and depression. And I found it's interesting. And I mean, some of you, I just borrowed this term, actually. It's called hollow heart. For lack of better words, I didn't read anything here, but instead I actually happened to find it in Chinese. Some of my colleagues in China, they use this term, 空心病. Basically, it means a child growing up only knows to listen and to others, and only all the child's students doing were basically trying to make other people happy, and including what college to go to, what major to choose, who to date, who not to date. And so what they experience, especially once they enter college during their first year, this is most prominent. They suddenly got lost because they really literally didn't know who they are. And some of them were talking about when they're in high school, they were so busy with the debate team or model union, and they just feel life was good and fulfilling. But once they are done with those, and now they are in college, be it the best, if not one of the best university in the world, they still feel empty. Okay, so just put yourself in the child's shoes and try to visualize that, or just feel that. Okay, what they have been doing, especially some of the children from Asian families, I would say, they even internalized this pressure, this stress. So especially for what we call the 乖孩子, the so-called good child, never argue with the parents, always follow the parents' advice, never object their desire, and always outperform, actually. These children, you could see the influence of their family, where they grow up, has a huge impact on their mental and psychological conditions. So I just wanted to say, sometimes when you talk towards the end of my internship, I actually had experience with 4 of what we call my clients. Okay, those 200 they are. I just seeing them as initial consultation, but I did end up with 4 of my own clients whom I would start with meeting them for the initial hour, which we call an intake process. During the intake process, you find out the families, the history, including mental health, psychological health history, and then you understand who the parents are, and understand kind of family environment where the child's growing up. Basically just relax, let them talk about how they were growing up. So, and then I will schedule subsequent sessions with students. Oh, by the way, for those of you who are not familiar with a psychotherapy process, it never just see a doctor and then one session will solve my problem or solve my child's problem. No matter how great a therapist is, please understand it takes multiple sessions. The very first session, usually just like, as I described, it's called intake. And then usually it takes several sessions. And what I found out is for the good child, and of course, I was only have the luxury, if you may say, dealing with good child, because after all, I was at Princeton University. I actually have one child, I kept calling them a child, I'm sorry, because in Chinese they're interchangeable. I should say young person, right? I have one client born in the United States. I have one one person came to the U.S. in high school. Third one came to the U.S. attending Princeton as an undergrad, and the fourth one came to Princeton as a PhD student. So I have like basically a fairly wide range of young people come to visit us at the CPS. And so a lot of these issues has to do with parents' own anxiety being projected onto our children. And if I wanted to bring it to everyone's attention, and I know some of the, especially the first generation immigrants, we grew up in totally different culture, and not being able to really speak for all cultural backgrounds, I could see many of the students from, say, minority, let's say the African-American families in the US, almost across the board, you're talking about racial trauma, okay? Throughout their childhood, families, their parents, all victims of collective trauma, which is in their case, the racial trauma. And for parents from mainland China, I could use it as an example. Our collective trauma is the so-called Cultural Revolution. And their papers published papers studying the collective trauma of Chinese, actually, I think that was a misspelling, typo. Intergenerational, meaning cross generations. Okay, cross generations of the collective trauma of the Cultural Revolution. So this, without getting into too much details, I just wanted to mention that here. Due to our own trauma or our own parents' trauma, I mean me, I'm a parent, right? But my own mom and dad, their experience during the Cultural Revolution and during the 3-year natural disaster, if you're Chinese, you know what I'm talking about. That's at the beginning of the 60s, when 3 years, millions, tens of millions of people probably, millions of people, tens of millions people died of starvation during the first 3 years of 60s. So those are our collective trauma. So if we unknowingly experienced that kind of anxiety from our own parents, we are already hurted. We have been hurt by that kind of anxiety, by that kind of trauma. And our children are also having the risk of being hurt by us. So sometimes I say our children are the wounded child of wounded child. That's what I mean, is we need to be aware of this projecting our own anxiety onto our children. So I'm going to talk about how to address that, but now I'm just going to give you this idea. And that's sometimes causing some of our parents being over controlling, and also our perfectionism, okay? Because sometimes coming from a very unfortunate background, experiencing horrific, I would say even in some part of China, it could be called atrocity, having been through that or having even heard of those things, sometimes this fear about something horrible could just happen without alarming. You never know what could happen. So do the safest thing, never do this, but do that. Some of these anxieties were exactly coming directly from that kind of experience. And we have sometimes taken these for granted. We thought, oh, of course, to give you an example, we in Chinese, we always have this concept about what is called 逆水行舟不进则退, okay? It's like you have to keep paddling, don't let go. If you stop paddling, you're going to be carried by the current backwards, while everybody else just passing you. You will never be able to catch up. Could you imagine growing up in that kind of family? And I know in the audience, some of you might understand what I'm talking about. You say, oh, of course, that's what I grew up, And some of you might be thinking, oh my gosh, that's why I was looking at this family. They were like scouting they're just poor Chinese girls, she already playing the piano so well, and her parents still think it's not good enough. Or say, why you send your kids to after school to learn more? Your son is already doing very well. No, he's not getting A+. He's only getting B+. Oh, B+ is bad. B+ is good enough. Those classes, remedial classes, only for kids who are failing, not for your son. No, he has to go. He has to keep paddling. Okay, so that's some of these things. I hope after today, we will come back, have other chance to talk about it, because these are deep in our, almost like something we grew up with. So how to awake your child's inner intrinsic motivation? Be a gardener. Don't be a carpenter. When you are a gardener, of course, being a good gardener, you know what not to do, right? You don't just yank the seedlings and just trying to say, oh, so you grow faster. 揠苗助长, right? You will not do that, And when you're looking at the 3-month-old kind of like very weak seedlings, you're not really go crazy and worry about it's going to stay that way forever, But if you look at yourself, if you are a gardener, you look at your kids, you say, oh, kids, just being silly, he hasn't wake up yet, I'm just going to be patient and just let him go, all I could do is just patiently provide the sunshine and rain, the water, the nutrition, and so one day he's going to grow up. He'll be fine. So if we were good gardeners, we think like that, right? But instead, if we're carpenters, what we do, we try to fix the kids. And you don't know how many parents reach out to me trying to learn how to fix their kids. So actually, it's the parents need to be fixed, right? So before we parent our child, we need to first parent ourselves, right? So sometimes we worry so much our kids won't get in the right university. So we worry about, why you learn so much physics, you will not even be tested on that, So we try to cut off their wings just so that they could get a good score. Thank goodness, I think most of the schools are going to do away with SATs. But there are other things. Our parents are really zooming in, trying to see, tell me exactly what kind of student you're looking for. If you look for the round student, okay, I think my son is a little kind of squared. I'm just going to cut all his corners, so that he will fit your criteria, But I always say, if you clip their wings, even if they got into the best university and they grow beautiful feathers, do you think they would be able to fly? So I know that's just a metaphor, but that's what we are talking about, thinking about, and I feel like only sharing these ideas of thinking and the methodologies, approaches, and you will figure out a lot on your own. So another thing we're talking about is extrinsic rewards. A lot of parents giving their children actually physical reward. That is the least. That's the worst. If you can do XYZ, I will buy that iPad for you. Okay. So a lot of study have recognized that if a child is already interested in doing certain things, but you put a price tag on it, basically saying, I'm going to give you certain things, if you do this, actually it's going to diminish their intrinsic motivation. So keep that in mind. And sometimes overpraising our child will serve like that too. Okay. If you look carefully about some of these studies, there's one tiny distinctions. Okay. Certain reward, if you're really rewarding for performance, where the child could actually get raised level of performance, and that could actually come back to enhance or at least not diminishing their intrinsic motivation. So we're not a academic study research meeting here, so I'm not going to talk too much about that. But just keep in mind, when you just wanted to use your influence, especially when you're talking about something material, it's very dangerous because sometimes kids could completely lose interest for doing something if you offer to or even praise them too much. So let them be. Okay, we're going to talk about what else you could do. Okay, so in Chinese, sometimes we call it 咬着牙等孩子开窍. Okay, here I found out in English, I just have to put down so many words. Okay, it's so many words. But so clenching your teeth, literally, sometimes we need to wait for our flowers to bloom. And as one of the dad told me one time, he said, oh, I got it. Yeah, maybe my child will never even bloom. He's a pine tree, he would just grow directly into a tree, Why would I foolishly compare him with the neighbor? The neighbor, in China, the Chinese culture, and probably in a lot of culture too, you look at the neighbor's child, look at that flower, so beautiful, you come home, you look at your own, this seedlings, who are you, are you a flower or not? Let me break it apart. Let's check it out, and by looking at it, by forcing it, you're actually destroying it, right? So, I always tell the story about Dr. Kevin, we call him. He's a very popular administrator in Rutgers Prep in New Jersey, and we once talked about the intrinsic motivation, and he has an education doctoral degree. He has doctoral degree in education, and he said, when I got my PhD, my mom came and she cried, and she said, "Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe I could see this day. You are a doctor now, and when you were in high school, you didn't even want to study." And Dr. Kevin just say, "Mom, I'm just 20 years later than other people." So I would imagine my mom clenched her teeth for 20 years and waited for the date when her child actually discovered himself, became Dr. Kevin. So I know some of the parents will say, but other than clenching my teeth, what else could I do? Especially during the pandemics, when I'm seeing them every day, like fooling around and not being motivated, when you say, hey, you got to B, if you work a little harder, you could get A's. And my son always tell me, oh, there are many people getting C and D's in my class. My B is not bad, So how could I motivate them? Okay, now I shouldn't really push them too hard, but what else could I do? I would say, but now you know why I say this is especially important for Asian parents or Chinese parents. Okay, leave some white space in your child's time. And I know some of you in the audience may not understand this. One time I was walking out of my door and my neighbor asked me, "Oh yeah, hi. Oh, how are they doing?" They're asking about my kids. What are you going to do? Where are you going now? And I said, "Oh yeah, I'm taking them ice skating. Sign them up for ice skating. And then and you're free in the afternoon." "Oh no, well, in the afternoon I have to take them to the Chinese school. It's Sunday." "Oh, they do other things?" I said, "Not much, compared to other Chinese kids. Like Thursday they learn piano, and Wednesday they go. My daughter learned drawing, and my son learned to play Go." And my neighbor would say, "And they go to school too?" I said, "Yes." So we're talking about filling their time with extra curriculums, with extra work. A lot of parents indeed have managed to fill every weekend of their child's time. I mean to say every evening of the week. Okay, sorry. Some parents manage to fill every evening of their child's week and every Saturday and Sunday. And you know who you are, right? So I would say leave some white space for your child if you wanted to leave some space for them to discover their intrinsic motivation. So a lot of parents say, but if I don't put so much work for them to do, study groups or extracurriculum, they don't know what to do with their time. They told me they're bored. That is the problem. A lot of the children now, if you give them 2 hours, say today maybe the teacher didn't show up, so got sick, so they can't go to their drawing class, art class. So they will sometimes complain, I'm being bored. They want it the adults to tell them what to do, or because they have not had to think about or figuring out what to do. So one time I was talking to an educator. He actually told his students, boredom is a disease. So he said, if you guys, he teaches, I think actually he's a founder as a head of school of a small private school in New Jersey. He told all his students, if you feel bored at your age, you are sick. As a child, there's no space for you to feel bored. So that I always remember that. I went to one of my good friends' home backyard, and she has 4 children. And to my amazement, her backyard was like a war zone. Lots of bumps, like not like this pristine lawn, no. So she basically let her kid just to dig tunnels and find out what's going on underground, what's that mole, making a home, how about that squirrel, where do they hide their food, so this backyard was like under construction, So you imagine, those children will never feel bored, or much less likely, right? So that's wonderful. But on the other hand, sometimes I feel we have too much arranged, too many arranged activities, because sometimes we parents, again, that anxiety comes back. We don't trust our children, and we don't even trust them to play. I talked about this. I've been talking about a story. I went to this beautiful garden in New Jersey, and have a beautiful garden, and I saw this parent with a girl walking there, and the girl ran away and came back and eager to show parents, look, Mom, what I found, and she's holding some probably some pebbles in her hands, and the first reaction coming from the mother was knock everything out, drop it, so dirty, so that kind of reaction usually stop our children from discovering their true passion. That there's a direct connection there. Actually, I'm sure once I pointed it out, you could see the connection. But lots of us unwillingly, not knowingly, are doing exactly that. So our children, when they're left alone, they don't know what kind of things you would approve, or what kind of thing will make you happy. So they're used to being told what to do, so they will feel bored. So if this happens, don't rush to try to unboard your child. Let your child be bored. Let your child be with the boredom, to stay with the feeling of being bored, and see what they will do. They will survive. Okay, and a lot of times our parents just say, well, then they were just playing computer games. Well, you could have a talk. Okay, a lot of us sometimes wanted to use our controls and powers in the wrong place. I'm not saying parents should never use their authorities and use their wisdom. And this is sometimes you may be able to have a talk with your child. Let's figure out what could be best way to learn how to use your own time. Okay, so that could be sometime without electronics. believe me, children could live and survive without electronics. Before the pandemics, for 16 years, I've taken children from North America to China for 4 weeks. And during my program, because Yinghua in Beijing, we do not allow our children, our students to have electronics for 4 weeks. Imagine the very first day when our counselor tried to collect all their electronics. Some of them were forewarned, but some parents were sneaky. They didn't want to tell their children because they were so worried if they had told their children they would not be with their electronics for 4 weeks, then their children may not be willing to go. But anyway, so at the end of the program, everybody survived. But what they most likely they report is the additional attention to each other, additional attention to their environment. So this is something we parents need to learn to give our children that ability, okay, by leaving some white space in their schedule. So about learning piano, actually I was in a WeChat group. Some of you know about WeChat. It's a social media group used mostly by Chinese immigrants and Chinese nationals and Chinese, you know, people in China. So this is by population is the most popular software. In the WeChat group, it was built for families with children learning piano, okay? And the title of that group shows this is a group, we are a group of bitter parents, okay? Bitter parents of piano learning children, okay? Literally that group's name translates into that. So why bitter? Because everyone, most of them were fighting with our children, trying to push and shovel learning piano. I'm sorry, some of you may never heard of this. You say, I always admire those Chinese kids who could play beautiful pianos. I'm sure some of them are due to their intrinsic motivation, but I could tell you, those parents who are in that group, they were bitter. Their children were not learning piano because their intrinsic motivation, okay? So there are pros and cons of learning piano. I'm not against even nudging your children or giving them the opportunity learning piano. The thing is how, okay? And sometimes I talk about, I'm really having trouble with some of the piano teachers inviting parents coming into the room to take notes on behalf of their children so that the parents could help their children to practice, to finish the assignment. I mean, if your children cannot understand the teacher's instruction, he's too young for this instructor. I don't know what the competition were. I mean, a lot of them say, oh, but Lang Lang started learning piano when he was only 3 years old. Look how great he is. Yeah, some of you probably already know who Lang Lang is. He is, I would say, one of the probably the best pianists in the world. But have you read his biography? Even as young as 3 years old, he would get up every morning, and first thing he would do is to jump to the piano and trying to bang his hand on the keyboard, making a sound just to beat the next door boys that he's starting to practicing earlier than him, because he loved piano so much. He does not want it to be like getting ahead by the next door boy. He loved piano with a vengeance, okay? He started with intrinsic motivation. His dad, be as fierce as he was, you know, everybody have, I mean, it's controversial about how he raised Lang Lang. But he didn't have to put him on the piano when he was 3 years old. Liang Liang wanted to, but unfortunately, a lot of us got the wrong idea. We only saw the young age and the success and the strict parenting. We forgot the passion. If your child is not interested in piano, at best, you could make it fun and let him have the opportunity, maybe developing some interest, if you don't try, you never know, that kind of thing. And I always say, I learned this very wise, I would say, almost like a technique, but actually it's just an approach from one of my retired, former boss, very wise Indian American. He's from India. He said, you gotta give some hope to the child, otherwise you say, let's learn piano. And if they started not liking it and you have to force them to continue, you started a battle, So I bought the piano, right? So I spent a lot of money and I don't want them just to quit after first month. So I told all my, both my children, I said, everyone has to learn piano for 3 years, okay? During those 3 years, you cannot quit, but you decide how much you want to practice. After 3 years, you can decide whether to continue or not. That's kind of fair, let the kids to see some hope. And some of us just making the kids feels like this is just like this bitter fight is going to last forever. Okay. So that kind of approach is an example that you kind of think from the kids' perspective. No one wants to be forced to do something they don't like to do, even though you might think they have something to gain if they learn piano. Or some of us think, oh, when I was a child, I never had an opportunity to play piano. Look what wonderful opportunity I give you. But that's our wishful thinking. But you could negotiate a little bit, but be able to understand truly, what our child is going to be dealing with. So pick your battles. And at the end of the day, it is your relationship with your child that matters. And I all know that the most famous scenario is we push and shove our kids to learn piano, and one day they truly discover their intrinsic love for piano. They want to be a musician, and we say, don't do that because you're going to be poor. You'll be in the street and live under the street, under the bridge. So balance. If we don't even fathom our children will become a professionals, do we have to fight the battle with our child? I know some of us wanted to feel good when my child just play at the Carnegie Hall, what an honor, everybody look at me and say, wow, you must have a beautiful, just a soul, genius, talented child. We love to hear those. Be conscious, be aware. Those could be coming from our, what I say, collective trauma. All those things accumulated, and sometimes these praises, these are our almost like opiates to nurse our wound. Okay, to make us feel better, to make our own self being recognized, accepted. So to actually meet our own needs, sometimes unwillingly, we put our child through this unreasonable pressure. So leave some white space for a child. And you don't need to ask if my child hates piano and the teacher even say he doesn't really have talent. And every time we fight, do you think we should still continue? So now you have the answer. Okay, so another thing is a lot of parents ask, how could I really train my kids to be curious? You know, where could I develop their curiosities, creativities, and imagination? I heard these are very important, you know, for our kids. There's not another training school to send your children to. These are the things they were born with. And what we could do is by leaving a lot of space in their time, it takes time for them to develop. And I know sometimes I have parents say, oh, I already stopped that, whatever that class, you know, I stopped 2 extracurricular program. Okay, he already have a lot of times. It's been 3 months. I haven't seen him develop their intrinsic motivation. He hasn't found his passion yet. What do I do? You know, we already said there's no timetable, and every child is different. I think about ourselves. How long does it take for us to find our passion? Or ask ourselves, do we have passion? You know, a lot of our first generation parents, when I ask this question, they look at me sheepishly thinking, yeah, I guess you're right. I never really found my own passion, because it's always trying to fulfill some other people's needs. And sometimes I joke, I say, if Newton were born in your family, we would never discover the universal gravity. Why? He never got to lay down under the apple tree and wait until the apple to fall on his head. So sometimes we really rush our kids without realizing our own action actually was counterproductive. So the second thing I thought you could do is teach our children the democratic process. This we have talked about, okay, just to learn how to make decisions by themselves. And you always, you know, start with defining who owns the problem, who is responsible, because we're talking about intrinsic motivations. You cannot say, okay, I am in charge of everything else. You just go find your passion. It's impossible. Okay, I know when you try to think everything for the best interest of your child, you're not thinking about it. Inadvertently, you actually kill their inner motivation. Okay, you killed their intrinsic motivation. Why? They don't even have time to develop them. So teach our children to make their own decisions. Sometimes that process could be a creative process, because they need to come up with creative solutions. So I have this line here. Okay, sometimes we try to tell our children, don't think too much, just do what I say because I know the best. I'm going to show you the shortcut. You know, so this is what I realized, you know, when I was in Princeton meeting with my clients. It's where the anxiety come. You know, I know some of the children from unfortunate families, maybe when they were young, there's starvation, there abuse, there negligence happening in the families. Those we could much easier to explain their anxieties later in life. But many our children are born in perfectly wealthy or a stable family. Sometimes parents or even have a very good relationship, lots of love even for them. Definitely not worrying about the food or worrying about paying bills or no. But where is this anxiety coming from? And sometimes after talking to them, you come to realization that why just a simple A- in Princeton could just send a student to the downward spiral of anxiety. Why? Because all their lives, they were told, you have to get A+, or you have to get A's, or else, or your life will be ruined. So all that internalized stress, all that internalized pressure, those beliefs may have propelled them into Princeton, right? I say it's double-edged sword. But you'll be surprised how many of the students actually felt that kind of way that you show them is probably the only way, because they almost feel like walking in the dark in this dangerous terrain. Only this one short path will work. If they step off bound, God forbid, got an A-, I don't know what's in front of me. Could be, I don't know, could be like cliff, or could be like, I may just fall off and die. Or I have a good friend who had to fly to Vancouver to be with her son, because her son had not responded to her communication for a couple of weeks, and she became really concerned. And it turned out her son had failed 2 classes during his 4 year of college, so he actually couldn't graduate. So he had to stay on for the 5th year. So that was enough to send him through this downward spiral. Actually, over time, developed very serious anxiety and even mild depression. And so fortunately, his mom came and of course, be very supportive and just say, oh, don't worry, you just graduate, and just everything will be fine. But all he was thinking about is, but people will look at my transcript and they will see, I failed 2 classes, oh, no one will look at your transcript. No one really care about your GPA. And in his, no, you're just lying. You're just making me feel good now. All my life, you've been telling me GPA is so important. So, but fortunately, he became a snowboard coach, worked a couple years and slowly coming back, looking for a job. He was math major and finding a job, and he developed this passion for Excel. He became the guru of Excel. I happen to be one, so I understand that passion. So be able to use VBA to do everything. And then these headhunters started looking for him. And one thing he told his mom is, Mom, I guess you're right. When I was looking for jobs, even the first one, no one even asked for my GPA. So do you see the irony in this? It is us who created that huge, unbearable anxiety in our children. So when they fail, they actually feel they really failed. When they fall, I should say, when they fall down, they think they failed. And they didn't even believe you because all their lives you've been overemphasizing. This is the only way to succeed. You never say, you know what? Even if you don't even get a whole A's, you'll be fine. I trust that everyone's different. You'll be fine. And really instead of just letting them playing, you develop their passion, find themselves, it will be different. I know in the audience, you might have some questions, but just keep that thought. Because if a child have experience with these detours, I'm thinking about hiking because I love hiking, right? Sometimes you like to try a little bit. You say, don't go there. I mean, that could be a dead end. But let me try. Who knows what I could discover? Maybe that'll be a big surprise, So let our children to learn to make choices. That's why earlier I said, when you have this brainstorming session, who owns the problem got to choose. Okay, it's not, even when they fail or like got bad grades, when you sit down and talk about how could we do differently next time, we'll have this brainstorm session, whether to find a tutor or whether to quit game the night before your exam, or whether to form a study group, whatever. In the end, the person who owns the problem got to pick how to do differently next time. But get them the opportunity to make choices. Even though you biting your teeth, you're saying, no, don't choose that. That one will give you the same bad result. But let them try it. So they will learn to find better options. So these are the things you could do. Thirdly, cultivating their sense of responsibility. Remember I mentioned this child who would just say, don't push me, get an A's. So many kids in my class get C and D's. I'm better than them. And you want them to always, set a higher bar. If a child learn to become a responsible person, and I'm sure when he's in the workplace, if he look at your company's, say, year-end bonus system. Okay, if I work really hard, I'm going to get 5,000 more than if I just plain lazy. And I look at my family, okay, my wife depending on me, my 2 babies depending on me, I better work hard, right? So being a responsible person, especially if not now, later in life, will learn to push harder, for something real. Some of the kids telling your parents, like, why you force me to study harder? They didn't see the big deal. Okay, so you can get a better college. Oh, I learned differently, not necessarily your kind of college. The one that suits me, the one suits me, that's the best for me. And from what I find out, that there are universities or colleges I can go to that without kidding me. So I'm not going to always force myself to get all A's. Actually, my son is sort of like that. He didn't say exactly those words to me, but he just could not get A's in those humanity classes. I would say my daughter it was a well-rounded student. She's the one get all kind of awards. Okay. My son is what they call the pointed student. He's definitely an outstanding STEM student, but he could not get those A's in English literature or your history or religion, which he actually see no relevance to life. Very hard for him. But we didn't push him to get A's. Oh, we one time invited Dr. Kenneth Ginsberg from UPenn. He's child psychologist, world-renowned speaker. He came at one of our annual conference, he actually talked about demanding a child to get all A's is to breaking their legs. I remember I was the first to applaud, and I stand up. I stood up during his speech, because at that time I thought, hallelujah, I never forced my children to get all A's. So I was afraid to break them. And as Dr. Ginsburg said, demanding them to get all A's are like breaking their legs. I mean, you can think breaking their legs, clipping their wings. The idea is that the children have their intrinsic motivations. If it's coming from themselves and they happen to be talented, well-rounded, they get all A's, so be it. But not demanding them, because that is at a higher price you may not realize and may not be willing to have your child to pay. So I would say cultivating the sense of responsibilities will be good enough, not necessarily focusing on the grades. So how to cultivate that? A lot of time I mention housework, and the parents right away say, yeah, I've been asking my son to clean up his room. Oh, excuse me. I'm sure he has told you, my room is the only tiny space in the whole universe that belongs to me, and I do not have control over it. The truth of the matter is, as I forgot, another psychologist talking about family relationship, said actually the rule of thumb should be whoever cannot bear the messiness in the house should be the one cleaning. Oops. So the child will not be responsible for the messiness because he's probably all right with it. So, but you just talk about housework and responsible. You can talk about responsible, being grateful, but the idea, I'm just giving the ideas, okay? I know the devils are all in the details. You figure out how to do it at your house. The purpose is for our children to learn to be responsible. So we talk about it, and we talk about what kind of things they can learn to take charge. So it's not something will become you every day nagging them about, okay? So if they are not motivated or they're not willing to take charge cleaning up their room, try something else. Start with something small, but the idea is through these, like giving them opportunity to develop their sense of responsibilities and also learn to be grateful. So these are the three things I've been talking about that would fuel the development of their intrinsic motivation without worrying about how am I going to motivate my son to get an A, okay? So you leave some space for them. And we know some of the most famous people are growing up in almost like a free environment. You know, I mentioned free play there. You know, many of the psychologists now is really calling kids having more free time, free play. You know, I know a lot of parents say, oh, but my son play a lot, you know, soccer, basketball. No, those are not free play. Free play means they make up rules themselves and they solve their own conflict themselves. Like when we were growing up, right? With just keys around your neck and just playing in the street and like a little wild and then just making sure not killing each other. And then, but nowadays our children don't experience that. So that's a huge challenge for mental health professions because we realize our children don't really know how to, you know, working with their free time, taking charge, and they don't know how to interact with each other to solve their conflicts. So the conflict resolution is a missing skill, because a lot of our children do not have those free time just to play freely among themselves. So one of the things I know it's been taken away from our children is, because of the pandemic, is play date. A lot of children used to just very easily go to each other's house. And by the way, if they do go to each other's house, please make a rule: do not bring their laptop or iPad. Easily you could do that, okay? So, but I still think, I don't know the situation in Canada particularly, but in the US, there are parks open. Just be creative. You could, with mask and the relative distance, reasonable distance. You could have kids coming up with ways of still play. So lots of times our kids showing anxieties or even mild sign of depressions during the pandemic, while they have to spend almost all of the time at home, it's because they really, for some of them, they actually, when they were in school, they almost unknowingly relying on the passive interaction with others. I'm this kid who just minding my business. I don't normally talk to people voluntarily, but my buddy passing by me just say, "Hey, John, how you doing?" I said, just like that. I'm being awakened, I'm being stimulated, somebody care about me, so those kind of passive interaction are completely missing when you are at home. So be really understanding. A lot of parents still worry about their homework. I know I have school administrators on the call here. Sometimes you really have to cut some slacks for our children. Remember being in the same trench with your children. Okay, every child's different. And I actually heard some of the more introvert kids enjoying being home, good for them. They actually feels like much more at ease, much less anxieties. I'm talking about the opposite. Some of the kids who are really suffering because they are really cut off from the very important interactions. So be on their side, and sometimes you have to figure out what's the most important things, and as far as I'm concerned, sometimes the homeworks and sometimes even whether to go to college on time or not might become secondary, because your child's mental health is of paramount importance. Okay, and I know some of the children, some of the parents are supportive enough to send their children to let their children to meet remotely with therapists. Some even have to start with certain medication. By the way, nowadays, if your child really experiencing very serious anxieties or even depressions, I know parents from certain cultural background really do not believe medication. They really worry about children could become dependent. Not necessarily so, okay? So really talk to the professionals. But what I'm going to say is some of the children, even when their conditions could be managed by professionals with medication, but the thing is, unless parents change, okay, when they coming out of their room, they literally, say, okay, I feel much better today, thank goodness, I don't feel that fog in my mind anymore. And the first thing the parents asking you, then how about catching up all the homework you have missed these days? Oh my gosh, that will just send the children all the way back to that dreadful feeling of inadequate or worrying about or the anxiety. So the parents have to realize the most important things are not even going to college on time. The important things is your child's mental health. They're not faking it. Okay, a lot of time our children's anxiety present themselves in the forms of physical aches and pains. Some children just like before their exams, they complain about stomach ache, and sometimes parents will just say, "You're just faking it," but just be mindful. Okay, be mindful. A lot of the parents later will report, "Oh, I wish I knew these have been the symptoms of anxiety, have been symptoms of depressions. I always thought my child was lazy, and I wish I knew that earlier." So don't be so too confident about your ability to diagnose your child. Connect them with a counselor, school counselor, and listen to the professions. And I do recognize that sometimes it's not easy to find the therapist who could connect with their child, especially for those parents who are not familiar with the psychotherapy process. They thought if the first one doesn't work, they just like, it's not helping. Well, it's like a dating game. You at least have to probably meet 3 therapists, unless the first one make your child feels like, yes, I think this person has been very helpful. Okay, otherwise I would say 3. Try 3. I know everyone when you meet them, you have to spend that hour of intaking and just to have to spend the time to explain what's going on, especially if you are teenagers, your child's a teenager, he or she might feel like very painful, or even feeling, not willing to go to begin with. And now you want me to do it 3 times, but just be patient. Sometimes if you both realize there's an issue, but she's kind of get discouraged by seeing a therapist, the first therapist, be with them for a while. Sometimes all you could do is to be there, 陪伴, okay, accompanying them, and be the loving parent you could be. And I'm talking about the kids who are showing signs of anxiety or depression, but not willing to seek professional help. Okay, but when there are times that you could talk, let them talk. Okay, not jumping, not pushing, not worrying about getting B's or C's, okay? Those are just the last thing you should worry about. So I'm talking about, again, back in here, not trying to overpower your children. Leave space, teach them to make decisions for themselves, and learn to be a responsible person. Okay. Next. Okay, very quickly, I really recommend the book by Paul Tough, How Children Succeed. Again, success is never defined as just wealth and power. Okay, it's health and your satisfaction about life. Okay, so like I understand my daughter as at least now, right? She really feels being a baker, professional baker. She's very talented. That's to begin with, and she feels that's a career seems like will give her the highest satisfaction. So it's wealth is only relative, right? But definitely health, satisfactions, these things are combined. It's not just money. Okay, so 7 character strengths best predicting a children's future success, a child's future success. It's grit. And as we said, it's not just keep doing it, don't give up piano, it's not necessarily, it's without passion. Only you have the grit, okay? You have the grit. Your kid's being tortured for 10 years trying to learn piano every week, okay? So perseverance, yes or no, okay? But grit, learn how to fall down and get up. So allow your child to fail, to find their own path. And we also talk about that double-edged sword. Remember, sometimes we talk to our children, like our children's very good at English, literature, or language arts, okay? But say fail math, okay? And sometimes we like to encourage, be encouraging, and you can do it, you can do it, just you can do well in math. Okay. What you don't know that now I know by talking to maybe your child as a young adult is that kind of thing put a tremendous stress on them. Okay, when you say you can do it, but we're talking about not everybody could do high-level math, okay? I'm just using this as an example. So sometimes we cannot just say you can do it blindly. Only when you actually know and give the child a real reason, then we say you can do it. But otherwise, just be mindful as a parent. When you just always say you can do it, sometimes we could push our kid into a stressful situation. And especially when you are the one with power and authority, they started questioning, doubting themselves. Oh, well, you say I can do it. Why can I still not be able to do it? Huh? Something's wrong with me. I'm not trying enough. I'm sleeping too much. 7 hours too much. And I have to say, I know some of the kids who don't sleep enough is because they spend too much time chatting with their friends. But there are kids who are studying too long. And I used to teach at the Lawrenceville Prep School here. In the U.S., you probably heard of it. It's the one of the top private schools. I taught mathematics there for 2 years. And our seniors, average sleeping time is 5.3 hours. I'm talking about high school, where study has shown lack of sleep has a connection with depression. Okay, so just think about that. So when we just say you can do it, and sometimes, or better, we tell our kids, you just try your best and be careful. That could be a double-edged sword. What do you mean? What do you mean best? Oh yeah, I told my son to try your best. He doesn't even try. And actually, I should say maybe mentally, psychologically, he's maybe having a lesser risk having anxiety problem. He might have others, but I'm saying that, right? But when you have a child who took your authority by heart, really think she should try all she can, it might mean to her that she should sleep less. Because you say, I should try my best. I don't think I need that much sleep. Okay, next thing you know, she started having serious mental illness because lack of sleep could disrupt her chemical balance and have unintended consequences. And by the way, when we talk about you have to try hard, what are we even asking our children to try? Your child could be a fish, but what we're talking about is to climb a tree, to nail that class or to nail that standardized test, something our child is not good at. If you ask a fish to climb a tree, I mean, he might try hard, but maybe he's just rubbing all the skin off on his tummy, he still cannot climb fast, not as fast as the monkey. So important thing is to finding out who our children are, what they love. They love swimming, I can tell you. If a fish, find a different way, so understanding, marrying their talent and really be in the same trench, on their side. I mean, in the same trench, meaning on their side. When others, sometimes I know maybe even some teachers unintentionally putting some pressure on you as a parent, you make sure they do this and that, but you probably know your child the best. My child's true strengths probably rest elsewhere. I know that may not get him into what's that best university in McGraw-Hill or University of what, Vancouver, I don't know, whatever the best, or Harvard or Princeton, whatever. Okay, but I know my child have talent and his strengths rest elsewhere. He will be fine. Even it means he take a different path. I'm on my child's side. So really understanding your child, that's more important. And I know some of the parents are forcing their children to do certain things are tough love. Tough love is trying to build up their immunity. When you go out in a community, in a society, when you go out to the world, who's going to be so empathetic? Who's going to be so kind and gentle with you? Just tough up. So you treat them so mean and so strict, so unconsidering, so unkind. What you do is you are destroying them. During the pandemic, we all know, we are waiting for the vaccine, right? We are all, but no one would say, I don't believe it. Just get my child some virus, If he die, he die. If he doesn't die, and then he's going to have the immunity, He's going to be fearless. He can travel the world because he after all he survived from the COVID. He already have antibody. No parents would do that, right? Because just by giving him the virus, you could kill him. But instead of what we learn to do is to care for their health, helping to build their own defense system, right? To give them nutrition, maybe extra egg or something, drink more milk or something, whatever you learn to do to really build your child up so that when they go out, if unfortunately they caught the virus, their own immune system be able to fight off the virus. But you would not be playing the role of giving them or testing them. So that's the same thing. I would say it's a kind of myth trying to kind of toughen up your child at home, because a child growing up in an unloving family, something's going to give. Okay, it could be maybe the hate towards others, maybe just this unforgiving. Never learned to be able to forgive anybody, that would anything of that sort that would probably come, that would definitely, I would say, definitely very likely to come back and haunt them. And they would likely to be the people either suffering privately or coming to our offices and crying. Okay, so actually kids who growing up under your power and authority, if they did rebel during the teenager years, actually that's a good thing. I'm talking about some of the kids who never rebel, and I read it in many psychologist books talking about they are the ones who will sit in my office crying as an adult because they never learn to resist the power and authority. So that's I digress a little bit, but this is talking about grit. So you build the grit by giving them chance to find their passion. The true grit means you failed and you can get up. And if we always worry about our child to take the wrong path, we are not giving them a chance to fall, let alone to develop their own grit. So in his book, there are other things also being discussed. I know one important thing is about health, self-control. That could be another 2 or 3 hours session about the gaming, computer games. I would say very quickly on that, a lot of parents thinking their child may have addiction. I should say, according to the DSM-5, that's like the Bible of all psychotherapists or psychologists. The definition of behavior addiction, the bar is actually quite high. The child or the person must have demonstrate, say, failed in work, or in our case, in school, or in even personal relationships, like really have what's the word? Cannot function. Okay, so I know a lot of parents already know, if you put it that way, my child may not be addicting, may not have been addicted to game by your standard, well, why? Because, he's getting A's in school, but I just hate to see him always on the computers, playing games. I always wish he could just use that time, maybe reading a couple more books, so he could do even better, Believe me, even if he doesn't play games, he will not be reading more books, probably. Okay, so having every child, every child's different. So if they play no more than 1 hour or even 2 hours per day, technically it's not considered to be addictive. They're not addicted to computer, and especially if they're not showing any dysfunctioning in school or in other areas. So sometimes giving kids some rooms to fail, meaning, letting them see their grades maybe drop a little bit, so then you can sit down and talk just to see how could do differently. So giving them a chance to learn how to take responsibilities, not by propping them up, by cutting off their internet every night, and you are the police. And then, so when they in college, suddenly help break loose, right? So then they, many of the many of the college students have been sent back home as a result, never learned self-control. So zest and optimism, needless to say, you need to, if you keep pointing out what they did wrong, of course, they would not be able to develop that zest, that passion, and or the optimism about themselves. I pointed out earlier, just we are not going to spend more time on that. Gratitude, we talk about briefly, doing housework. Curiosity, of course, I know some of the students, parents would teach the kids material during the summer, and then the student, their kid will learn second time in school, and then before the test, they will hire tutors to learn third time. So the child might get A+, but definitely have no interest. No, you're not talking about curiosity about any subject if you subject your child to that kind of drilling. So realizing out of these 7 character strengths, we're not talking about academic grades, okay? Not as important as curiosities. I'm looking at time here. I have a quick story. One child, as he was graduating from high school, at that time, I think the GM came to school trying to look for graduates to attend its technical school. The mother said, "What? I'm expecting you to go to college, but this boy is passionate." I've been to his room. One full wall are with these model cars, and model car, not plastic cars. Okay, model cars, real, like a proportion of the real one. Whole wall are these actually quite pricey collector automobiles models. He wanted to go to that kind of school, and he actually thrived there. In the end, out of that, I think, I'm sorry, it's not GM. It's just a technical school trying to get people to learn how to fix cars, basically. So in the end, I think they picked 2 best students to learn BMW, to particularly just get special training on BMW. So he was chosen, and he ultimately was sent to China to be responsible for the southwest region. I think south region of China. So become very successful management. I should say, very successful person. The story, the moral of the story is sometimes it's not necessarily what we see as the shortcut is the true shortcut. And by the way, at some point when he was being this general manager, and his parents still trying to convince him, how about go back to college to get a degree? And he said, "Mom, I am leading, I'm managing people who are PhDs, I don't need a college degree anymore, So sometimes you never know. And the passion is the most important thing sometimes to lead our children to success, okay? Very quickly, element 3, accepting the imperfect child. This actually could be the very important section, but I am running out of time. I realize that when I'm giving my talk in English, I am much slower. I'm so sorry. Okay, so whether we're talking about complete or perfect child, okay, when you talk about a complete child, comes with strengths and weaknesses, okay? So do I have until 9:30 or okay? Just I have to give this story because I know this is one of the most there's this myth about strength. Okay, there's this book called Now Discover Your Strength, and there is an experiment about this course. Because power reading, they did research on it. I forgot whether it's 8th grade or 4th grade, but basically they did a pre-test before this course and then they did an after test. You know, the power reading is to teach you to read fast. And there are kids who tested well before they went into the course. And they learned how to read fast. And these were the kids already have pretty good reading abilities, those who tested well. And there are kids who tested not so well because they probably, that's why their parents want to send them to this course, right? So the question is, guess after the test, which group of kids have made most progress? Okay, if you know how, give me answer in the chat box. I want to come back to check. Do you think the kids who, before the test, who could read fairly well, fairly fast, they improved the most, or the kids who couldn't read fast or well, they improved the most? Okay, I know some of the parents think, I know that's a trick question. It is the kids who already reading fast, making even more progress. I admit I didn't go back to validate the research. Okay, but the idea there is sometimes maybe we try too hard trying to improve our children's weakness as opposed to focusing on their strength and trying to raise their strengths or allow them to leverage their strengths to become a overall capable person. Overall capable person, but without having to learn the skills or master the skills they have no interest, or maybe, God forbid, they have zero talent in. There are such things that sometimes can be very hard for some of the kids. And sometimes we feel that if you only learn to speak loud in front of people, we are thinking they could be the leader. They could be this charismatic leader and have power, and actually not necessarily so. Okay, I always recommend parents who have children who are introverts to read the book, Quiet, The Power of Introvert in the World That Can't Stop Talking. And you will learn the true power of your children and probably will stop, hopefully, worrying about their lack of willingness to commingle with other people or even a little bit shy, okay? So emotional bank account is what we use as a concept. We learned that from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Talking about emotional bank account, that's how much, that's a measurement of your relationship with our child. And as with any bank account, we can make withdrawals by yelling at their child, okay? See if you could not yelling at them for 100 days and many parents will just go screaming, right? I yelling at my child every day. Then I said, is yelling help? Of course, not helping. If helping, I would not be yelling every day, right? So you're not changing the child, but you are making tremendous withdrawal. So here, we need to reflect on our own anxiety. I highly recommend meditation. There are apps, Headspace, Waking Up, that we can really face our own anxiety through learning these techniques. But if, say, we still cannot manage our own anxiety, I use a Chinese word here. I know there are tools that where you probably could learn about our collective trauma through learning about other people's growing up stories, maybe that could provide a mirror for you to learn about your own anxiety and how to maybe better manage it. If everything fails, I would say we as parents, we need to see therapists. I'm not kidding. Okay, so I give a link that's probably only work in US, psychologytoday.com, where you can find therapists in your area. Again, look for 3 and try to see the best fit. So how to make a deposit into an emotional bank account. So this is probably my last slide. I recommend this book. So it's through word of affirmation. Remember, not just empty praises. We talk about feelings, okay? Feelings and needs, but talking about what you have done just make me feel so relaxed or so happy, you know. So use those words to affirm what your child have done, not just empty praises like good boy, good girl, you know. So I'm not going into details, but gifts, but not extrinsic rewards. Remember we talked about that. And acts of service, but not overtaking responsibilities, you know, not pulling your children's luggage, you know, when they're even 16 years old. I have seen that. Also quiet time, no, not quiet time, I mean quality time. Listen to your child more. We talk about that. And when we, another thing, physical touch. Okay, physical touch in some cultures is less emphasized. So very important making deposit into emotional bank account. How to communicate, red zone, irreversible, life-threatening situation, have to listen. Screening is okay. Okay. Green zones, frivolous things, you know, what color is hair or what, okay, it's not so frivolous for some parents, or what clothes to wear, you know, but important thing is sometimes we're dealing with a lot of issues in the yellow zone. Sit down and talk. Don't try to rush it when you're cooking or when you're driving. So first talk about the feelings and then reason. Define the problems, who owns the problem, brainstorming, bear the consequences. Okay, boundaries, you know, for instance, a child fails a test. Who owns the problem? The child owns the problem. Okay. But it's my parent, I'm a parent, it's my responsibility to make sure he does everything. No, your child owns the problem. You, especially if your child is in high school or whatever, you ask for permissions. Do you need any feedbacks from me about your recent failed test? If the child says, no, I'm okay, I can figure out, okay, you close your mouth, okay. But if child said, okay, maybe, I don't know, you know, so brainstorm and not telling your child what to do, but let your child pick what could be maybe better options for how to do it different next time. Okay, they bear the consequence. And if they fail again by doing something you feel, it's not going to help. It's not going to help you. But let them choose that. And when they fail again, be in the same tranche again. On their side, I see you very frustrated this time because you try really very hard this time, but still failed. Is there anything we could talk about to do differently next time? If the child still say, no, I'll do it, then don't offer. How about I find a tutor for you? Your child need to learn to make decisions. Make the decisions even when they might be not the most best decisions, but they learn from the whole process. Remember, we talked about that's how they really discover their own passion. So I hope I've talked enough today, not bored you to death. And I guess I'm open to questions. If there are still remaining questions that still, I don't know, do I still have time? I forgot his.
Thank you, Ms. Liao.
That
was very informative. Because it was such a fulsome presentation, I only clocked in one question, and I saved it. Now I just need to find it. Someone mentioned that her son has a lot of intrinsic motivation for piano, something that you were talking about, but very little intrinsic motivation for schoolwork. Now, I know the whole definition of the word intrinsic. You can't force something that's intrinsic on someone. But do you have any tips on how to maybe gently guide someone from one who has the ability to be motivated, clearly, self-motivated, but is there any way to kind of push that in a different direction?
Definitely. I'm actually very glad you asked that question. Actually, I should say this, parents, you're lucky your child's most motivated thing is not playing computer games. I have parents, a similar thing, even say my kids is most motivated to become a gamer, professional gamer. What am I going to do that? He's truly intrinsically motivated. I should say, right, we talk about, it's not about preaching, because a lot of the time that will not help, not lecturing. But how about, first of all, hopefully you have an existing good relationship with your child. And this definitely is not in the red zone. This is not in the green zone. This is yellow zone. So let's sit down. Let's sit down and talk. The thing is, if we're talking about a child's future, maybe, depending on how the conversation goes, you could come up with an idea about plan A, plan B, and plan C. Oh, wow, wonderful, I see. So talk about feelings, right? I see you're just so passionate about playing piano. I'm sure if you were able to play piano for the rest of your life, that could be just your dream come true. I get that. It's like, then that I see that wonderful plan A. So talk about maybe plan B, plan C, the what ifs, and sometimes, so I'm just giving a general direction. And many children, they actually are willing to consider your plan B or even your suggestion or whatever, if you don't just call their plan A total unrealistic or foolish. Okay, so this is again talking about empathy. Do you really understand where that passion coming from? For instance, I'm even talking about some child really interested in art. Initially parents are really freaked out, feeling like, oh my gosh, you're going to be the street artist, just painting people's portrait for $20, in the winter, So, but the thing is, sometimes as parents, we could do our homework too, to help our child to think broader. Actually, for instance, I only want to use the art because I have an answer sort of for that. there are a lot of web design companies really looking for art people with artistic talent. So actually, I know a family who supported our child to really pursue their artistic talent, and also because they were talking about Plan B and C, and so the child find her dream school and figured out how could get her into that school, right? So which means you need to do some other study, but the idea is to develop her passion, right, along the way, and then she also find out, she will not become a starving artist because there are these other things she could do with her talent. So I guess it's great your kid does have a passion, So sometimes it's our parents, really the challenge to the parents, how to sort of transform that into a into broaden it up without having to put them down. So some kids go with a Plan B, Plan C, or as I said, the kid who wanted to also along the same direction but broader there. But some other kid who will say, okay, piano is one, maybe programming is another one. I happen to like that too. So idea is to support your child without, without putting them down. Or I hope that helps.
Thank you. I haven't seen any. That was a very good answer. Thank you. I haven't seen any more questions. Just give everybody one last chance on chat if there's any further questions. Otherwise, I think we can call it a night. And we definitely learned a lot tonight. And I thank you on behalf of everyone. I'm not seeing any questions. I'm just seeing compliments.
I see one quick question. I guess the last one about setting discipline. Yeah, this is about boundary. This is about boundary.
Sorry, there it is.
Yeah, sorry. I just saw that. Yeah. So again, this is not red zone, not green zone. So nothing to scream your child at and nothing to be ignored. So sit down, depending on the child's age. So sit down, talking about it. And I always say, when you sit down with a child, try really do your homework, looking yourself in the mirror before you sit down, and don't have to look this mean, like this witch look, So, but be kind, but firm, talking about, I understand, like today you were really, really frustrated when Jonathan kept poking at you, you must very much annoyed. So talking about feelings first, and then talk about needs, you really wanted to other students show some respect to you, talk about needs, and then talking about some boundary, but we have talked about absolutely no violence, no hittings, no exception. But how about we talk about some alternative to that? So that's where the brainstorming starts. But again, hitting other people, who owns the problem? It's the child owns the problem. Maybe the principal called the parents, but still the child owns the problem. So the child should pick his choice, when you having these, maybe brainstorming something, okay, ignoring him, but poke him again next time without being caught, or hit him at home or whatever. But having these options laying out and let the kids pick, and then just see how it goes. Let the kids experience their consequence, So again, discipline is not forcing the child to write down, I will do this and that, and later say, you wrote these, you signed your name at these, why didn't follow your words? Well, you forced me to do it. What else could I do? Same thing with the schedule. You promised you're going to practice 2 hours per day. Why didn't you do? Well, what else could I say? You and the teacher forced me to do it. Okay, so a lot of these, I'm just bringing it up, making sure we grow awareness. And I'm sure between you and your child will be able to figure out something. And same thing about child spending too much time on the internet. Is that a yellow zone problem? Yes, then sit down. When sit down, we talk about the sequence today, right? Talk about the feelings, the needs, and then talking about brainstorming, letting the child make their choices. And the thing is, if you just forcing the child, screaming at them, and it's not going to be helpful in the long term. So try some of these different things maybe you learned today. Okay, Shuang, I mean, some of the parents mentioned they wanted some of the books. I think are you going to show the QR code for the group or something?
Yeah, I think Shuang mentioned that she has a list and a QR code. Is that right?
These are the books, and then okay, parents, if you have a camera, maybe you can take.
Yeah, those are the books.
This whole thing is being recorded too, so it'll be available later.
But
yeah, taking a quick picture of the screen might not be a bad idea.
Yeah. And there's a parents group, there's a QR code. If you're willing to join our group, you can take a picture and scan a QR code.
I want to thank everyone.
Can I have a quick question?
Okay. Do I have time?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick question. Sorry. I have a 12 years old. I think he probably spent too much time on the internet, and not just on the YouTube, also watching video games. And a lot of the time, maybe part of that is because the pandemic, he's staying home for school. But I also feel it's kind of to set a boundary how much time he could spend on the internet every day. It's like a battle. So any suggestion for this age? He's 12. I understand it's like a natural at this age. It's probably like a new nature for kids at this age to spend time on the internet. But how much is too much?
Yeah. How much is too much? Let's talk about that just briefly. And first of all, I'm not an expert on that, but I have learned that 1 or 2 hours, given the pandemics, is not considered to be outrageous. You might think, oh my gosh, it is true. We are talking about very special period, and also depending on how, and as you say, whether it's gaming or whether it's impacting on his other behavior, whether he totally not studying at all, not doing homework, that's another thing. Well, okay, we're talking about whether he has addiction or not, okay. But on the other hand, using our red, green, yellow zone, this is obviously a yellow zone problem. So every child is different. Even if I tell you what to say to a child, how you're going to respond, depending on how your child will respond to you, right? So idea is to sit down, not just you talk, but really, be on the same side. I know it's so difficult. We're staying stuck at home. If I were you at your age, I probably wouldn't know I probably wouldn't be able to stand, but depending on your child, I mean, I may be able to say that because I know myself, if I was asked to stay home attending a Zoom class every day, I would go crazy, so I could say that to my child. If I were you, I would probably, having like my brain oozing out, I would. So say whatever you feel authentic to your child, but idea is to truly put yourself in your child's position. I mean, of course, if you happen to be the person love working remotely, and this is about empathy, it's more than just treat others the way you want to be treated. Okay, I love Zoom. I love Zoom meeting. Why can't you just love Zoom class? But empathy is treating others the way they want to be treated. Okay, so when you're talking about how your child feel, you got to really understand or feel he's feeling probably miserable, miserable. So he had to actually resort to playing games or staying online. I do not know. If I were to truly perfectly answer your question correctly, I have to spend hours with your child, or at least that 1 hour to really understand. But so I'm just throwing out some of these ideas. You need to sit down and talk and really, first of all, show how you care about how he feel. 先讲情后讲理, always talking about the feelings first, and then talking about the needs, whatever the need, his needs, your needs for keeping your brain from being fried or whatever. You talk about those, not just I think you should. So maybe you come up with, you could, and again, brainstorming, right? Maybe you think there's only one solution, because we don't have time to give you. To let you give me the answer. Maybe you think there's only one best way to deal with this, but you talk to a child, maybe it's less best, but it's his choice. And let him, maybe he used to be able to get A's when he go to real classroom. Now, because he got so distracted, gets so frustrated because he could not talk to his friends, cannot touch them, so he played too much computer games, so he get B's. So be it. Maybe B is the best he could get, from feeling crazy, So that's how you need to understand every child is different. Instead, question our own anxiety. What am I afraid of? So maybe without really knowing your situation, that's the best I could do, just to have a heart-to-heart discussion with our child, really authentic. You're not pretending. Actually, how much a computer game you play doesn't matter. No, you cannot say that because you do not act like that, but really care about how they feel. And then when you talk about how you feel, they maybe care about how you feel a little bit. Otherwise, if you don't care how they feel, why would they care how you feel? So really be authentic and exchange some feelings and exchange some needs and see where you can go from there.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your attention, everyone. Do we end here?
Yes, I think we are done. We really appreciate your lecture or your presentation this evening. I found it very informative. I know everybody else did. Reading the comments, there's lots of only positive feedbacks. We really appreciate it. And unless Shuang has anything that she wanted to add, I think we're done.
Yeah, I think the parents can scan the code and ask a question later. Yeah, because I know it's quite late and Bonnet just keep talking for 3 hours and without drinking water is quite tired. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you everybody for attending.
Thank you.
So should I end the meeting for all?
We'll send out a survey link later. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
谢谢廖老师，辛苦了。
没问题，没问题。
Hey, Sean, if you can, you are the host now. If you leave, you can end the meeting to all. Yeah, for all.
OK， 你已经把我整成 host 了。
Right.
OK, let me stop sharing first.
Yeah.
OK, 谢谢魏红啊。
不用谢。
谢谢
你。廖老师已经下了哈。
廖老师辛苦了，一直在讲，都没有喝水，2次都是。那我就关了，谢谢。
好的，那就是好的，
拜。